The night my daughter-in-law's parents tried to pay me $700 a month to stay away from my own son. They honestly believed they were humiliating a poor old woman. What they didn't know was that the poor old woman sitting across from them quietly makes about $40,000 a month. And the moment they realized the truth, the entire restaurant went dead silent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm Evelyn Carter, 63 years old, and for the past decade, I've lived in a modest apartment in Denver, Colorado. Nothing fancy. Beige walls, secondhand furniture, and a balcony that overlooks a parking lot and a grocery store sign that flickers at night. Most people who meet me assume I'm just getting by. Honestly, I've never bothered correcting them. My son, Ryan, believes I work a simple office job. He's never asked many questions, and I've never volunteered many answers, not because I wanted to lie to him. I just didn't want money shaping the way he built his life. I wanted him to succeed on his own terms. And, to his credit, he did. Ryan became a civil engineer. Smart, hard-working, stubborn in that quiet way that makes a parent proud. By 30, he had bought a townhouse in Aurora, built a solid career, and seemed genuinely happy. Then he met Vanessa. Vanessa was pleasant at first, polite, always smiling. The kind of person who laughs a little too quickly at everything you say. I remember thinking she seemed eager to be liked. Her parents, though, were different. Her mother, Diane Whitaker, had that polished smile that never quite reached her eyes. And her father, Gerald Whitaker, carried himself like every room he walked into belonged to him. They lived in a huge house outside Scottsdale, Arizona, the kind with tall iron gates and a driveway longer than my entire apartment building. The first time we met, Diane looked me up and down like she was quietly assessing the value of a used car. "Oh," she said slowly, noticing my old handbag. "You're Ryan's mother." There was something in the way she said it, like she'd expected more. I ignored it. Families can be awkward at first. But over the next year, the little comments started stacking up. At dinner one evening, Diane smiled sweetly and said, "Vanessa grew up around a certain standard of living." Another time Gerald chuckled and asked Ryan, "So your mom's still working at that little office job?" Ryan laughed it off, embarrassed. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But what bothered me wasn't the snobbery. It was the way they slowly started trying to control everything around my son. They insisted the wedding be held in Scottsdale. They pushed Ryan to move closer to their side of the family. And every time I visited, Diane would make some soft little remark about how difficult it must be living on a tight budget. At the time, I didn't realize what they were building toward. Looking back now, the signs were obvious. About 6 months after the wedding, Ryan called me one evening sounding strangely nervous. "Mom, Vanessa's parents are in town," he said. "They want to take everyone to dinner tomorrow night." "Okay," I said. "That sounds nice." There was a pause on the phone. "Yeah, it's at this steakhouse downtown." Now, I knew the place. One of those high-end restaurants where the steaks cost more than my weekly grocery bill used to. Still, I showed up the next evening wearing a simple navy dress and my usual handbag. When I walked into the restaurant, the host guided me to a large table near the windows. Ryan and Vanessa were already there. So were Diane and Gerald. Diane's eyes immediately flicked to my bag again. "Evelyn," she said with a tight smile. "You made it." Dinner started pleasantly enough. Small talk, weather, work. Vanessa chatted about a vacation they were planning, but something felt strange. Gerald kept checking his watch. Diane kept glancing at Ryan like she was waiting for something. And then, right after the waiter cleared the plates, Gerald leaned forward and folded his hands on the table. "Evelyn," he said calmly, "we'd like to discuss something important with you." Ryan shifted uncomfortably beside me. "What's this about?" he asked. Diane gently touched his arm. "Honey, this is just a family conversation." Then she looked directly at me. "Evelyn, we've noticed that Ryan feels responsible for you." I blinked. "Responsible?" "Yes," she continued smoothly. "Your living situation, your finances, things like that." Ryan immediately frowned. "Mom never asked me for anything." Gerald raised a hand slightly, cutting him off. "That may be true," he said. but we believe it would be healthier for the young couple to focus on their future without unnecessary obligations. I stared at him, trying to process what he was implying. And then Diane reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, and slid it slowly across the table toward me. At the time, I honestly thought it was a gift. Maybe a kind gesture. But what happened next shocked even me. Inside the envelope was a printed agreement and a check. $700 a month. In exchange for one simple condition, I was expected to stay out of my son's life. And that's when I realized this dinner had never been about family at all. It was a negotiation. And they thought I was desperate enough to accept. Before I continue, if you enjoy real-life karma stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now back to the story. I slowly set the paper down and looked at Diane. You're offering to pay me? To stay away from my son? Her smile didn't even crack. Think of it as helping everyone maintain healthy boundaries. Ryan looked stunned. Mom, I didn't know they were doing this. Gerald spoke again, calm and confident. $700 every month. That should cover your rent, I imagine. For a moment I just sat there, because in that moment something fascinating happened. I realized these people had spent months studying my clothes, my apartment, my lifestyle, and they had concluded that I was poor, desperate, dependent. And the craziest part? They actually believed they were being generous. Gerald pushed the envelope slightly closer to me. Just sign it, he said. It will make things much easier for everyone. The table was completely quiet. Ryan looked horrified. Vanessa looked nervous. Diane watched me carefully, waiting, and I suddenly understood something. They thought they had all the power. They thought they were rescuing their daughter from some embarrassing financial burden. But what happened next? None of them saw coming. I picked up the check again, looked at the number, and then slowly leaned back in my chair. And that's when I decided it was finally time to tell them what I actually do for a living. But before I could say a single word, Gerald made one more comment that changed everything. Gerald leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and gave me a look that was supposed to feel generous. You should really think about this carefully, Evelyn, he said. At your age, stability matters. $700 a month is a fair arrangement for someone in your situation. Someone in your situation. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ryan immediately shook his head. Dad, Mr. Whitaker, this is ridiculous. My mom never asked me for money. Diane cut in smoothly. Ryan, sweetheart, we're just trying to make sure you and Vanessa can focus on building your future, without distractions. Distractions. That word stung more than the offer itself. For a few seconds I didn't say anything. I just sat there, holding the check between my fingers, looking at the number printed in the corner. $700. That's when something strange happened. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the entire situation felt so surreal. They had studied my simple clothes, my old car, my small apartment, and they had built an entire story in their heads about who I was. But what happened next shocked everyone at that table. I placed the check back inside the envelope and gently pushed it toward Gerald. I appreciate the offer, I said calmly, but I don't need $700. Gerald frowned slightly. Then what exactly do you need? I folded my hands on the table and looked directly at him. Nothing, I said. Diane's smile tightened. Evelyn, let's be realistic. You live alone in a small apartment and work a basic office job. We're just trying to help. Ryan looked confused. Mom, you do work at an office, right? Well, yes, I said slowly. But not the kind of office job you think. Gerald chuckled. This isn't the time for pride. Everyone needs help sometimes. That's when things turned. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Ryan, I said, sliding it across the table. Open my email. He looked puzzled but unlocked it. The first message was a company report. My name was at the top. Regional Executive Director. Monthly Revenue Summary. Ryan's eyes widened. Mom, what is this? I've been the regional director for a logistics firm managing distribution contracts across the West Coast, I said, for 12 years. Gerald blinked. And? My average monthly income is just under $40,000. The silence was thick. Diane's smile vanished. Gerald went pale. Ryan looked as if the floor had dropped beneath him. You make $40,000 a month? He asked. Roughly, I said. Vanessa leaned forward. Wait, if that's true, why the small apartment? Because I like it, I replied. Then I looked at Gerald. And I never wanted my son to think money was something he could depend on. Gerald cleared his throat. Well, that's impressive. But what? I asked. He had no answer. Diane looked rattled. So you're saying you're wealthy? I'm saying I certainly don't need $700 to survive. Ryan stared at the phone in disbelief. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to build your life without leaning on mine, I said quietly. I turned to Gerald and Diane. But the interesting part isn't the money. Gerald frowned. What do you mean? You were willing to try to buy a mother out of her son's life. Diane tried to recover. You're twisting our intentions. Am I? I asked. Ryan pushed his chair back. Wait, you seriously tried to pay my mom to stay away from me? Gerald raised his voice. Ryan, calm down. No, Ryan snapped. You tried to humiliate her. Vanessa panicked. Ryan, please. But he was already standing. I can't believe you did this. Diane reached for the envelope. This was clearly a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't, Ryan said firmly. The restaurant had gone quiet. Gerald looked furious. You're overreacting. Ryan laughed bitterly. You tried to treat my mom like a charity case. Then he turned to me. Mom, I'm so sorry. I shook my head. You didn't do anything wrong. Diane's voice cracked. Ryan, we were only trying to protect you. From what? He asked. No answer came. They weren't protecting him, they were protecting their pride. Gerald finally stood. This conversation is over. But Ryan didn't follow. He sat back down beside me. For the first time that night, the power at the table had shifted. Diane looked like she might cry. Gerald wanted to disappear. And the $700 check sat untouched in the middle of the table. They came thinking they could buy silence. Instead, they revealed who they truly were. Ryan barely speaks to them now. Vanessa eventually apologized, though our relationship remains careful. The strange thing? I don't feel angry. Sometimes, people reveal their true character in the simplest ways. All it took was a $700 check.